Now, the most powerful news, talk, and information team in Baltimore is right here. Fox News, along with the Weather Channel, delivers the information you need. Plus, hear the hot topics and issues of the day. Only on Talk Radio 680 WCBM and WCBM.com. The views and opinions you hear on Talk Radio 680 WCBM and WCBM.com are not necessarily those of the owners, management, employees, and advertisers of WCBM. But they should be.
The Pat McDonough Show is brought to you by Rally for America. This is Talk Radio 680 WCBM. It's time now for the Pat McDonough Show. Here's your host, Pat McDonough.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Pat McDonough Rally for America Radio Network. Tonight we're going to do a very special program. We do these kinds of shows occasionally, not that often, but when I think there is an important subject that is not receiving the kind of attention and exposure that it deserves, I think it's important to make a contribution and get that information out to the folks, you folks out there, our listening audience. And I would say, without fear of contradiction, that most of you care about your state and your country, and you listen to this program and you listen to talk radio because you want to be informed. And that's what we're going to try to do this evening. And quite frankly, it's a subject that I find fascinating and important and that I know very little about. And the purpose of this program tonight is to educate and inform everyone listening, including me. So I'm not going to be taking a dominant role in this show, and I know you're saying that's quite impossible, knowing your ego and personality, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to be the moderator tonight, and the folks that have joined us in the studio are the people that we're going to talk with, and we're going to find out about the subject of farming and agriculture in the state of Maryland. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I'm just going to give you a few facts that were given to me by Valerie Connolly, who is the representative in Annapolis for this industry. The number of farms in our state as of 2011 were 12,800. The average size of the farm was 160 acres, and the land that are in the farm's control are over 2 million acres. The gross farm income is $2 billion, and farm production expenses $1.5 billion. You can do the math there. The net farm expenses per farm, $120,000. The total net farm income, $412 million, or a net income of about $32,000 per year, which is pretty shocking, I think, for a lot of people. The average age of a farmer in Maryland is 57 years. And farm products that we're familiar with are broilers, greenhouse and nursery, milk and dairy products, vegetable, corn, cattle, calves, soybeans, eggs, wheat, hay, fruit, nuts, hogs, tobacco, barley, and this is the stuff that you eat every day, and you know it just doesn't come out of McDonald's or the supermarket. Somebody has to put it all together, and I think, and I'm guilty of this too. For many reasons, we just take it for granted, and we really don't pay attention. So, the folks that are with us this evening are farmers, along with Valerie, who represents their interests, as I said, in Annapolis, and does a great job, and has been really helpful to me to put this program together. And I can tell you, it's very complicated. As we go on through the show, you're going to discover that it is a very complicated situation. You think of farming as a very simple thing, but we live in Maryland, which is a big government state with a lot of regulations, and we have the great blessing of being a state that almost half of it is water, meaning the Chesapeake Bay. And the Chesapeake Bay has a big impact on farming. We have with us three people in the field farming, and I want to start off, first of all, with Pat Langenfelder, who is the president of the Maryland Farm Bureau. And Pat, if you could just introduce yourself and probably tell us a little bit about the Maryland Farm Bureau.
Okay, I am Pat Langenfelder, and I live in Kent County, Maryland, with my husband and our 3 children and their children. We have a family farm there. But you asked me about Maryland Farm Bureau. Well, Maryland Farm Bureau is the voice of Maryland agriculture. We represent the over 37,000 members in the state, and we go to Annapolis quite a bit, and Valerie is our lead person there. We represent agriculture, as I said, and we care a lot about what goes on with our farming community, and therefore we go and represent them whenever and wherever needed.
Now, how many people are members you mentioned?
We have 37,000 members. Not all are actively engaged in agriculture. Many of them are just want to be part of Maryland Farm Bureau, I should say, and so the active farmers probably are more along 8,000 members are active farmers.
Okay. Now, those who listen to this program on a regular basis know that I always talk about Montgomery County, the Democratic Socialist Republic of Montgomery County, which I ruthlessly and unfairly beat on a regular basis. But believe it or not, they have farming in Montgomery County. And, in fact, the vice president of the Montgomery County Farm Bureau is with us, and he's he's not gray. He's a grain and hay farmer, and it's Eric Spates. Eric, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. I farm about 1,000 acres of western Montgomery County and grow primarily hay and grain. As you said, I do soybeans, wheat, and corn, and the grass hay that I produce is for the local equine industry.
Okay, now tell us a little bit about farming in Montgomery County. Valerie mentioned before the show that there is a special program that's a little different that's going on there.
Yeah, we have the Ag Reserve in the county, and back in, I guess it was about 1980, they changed the zoning on about 90,000 acres of the county, effectively creating so aside from a few towns in that region, it's primarily agricultural land, and it's a bit of an enclave now. We look to the south to Leesburg and see townhouses, and certainly just to our east is Germantown. It's quite developed, and then we have the 270 corridor kind of splitting the county. So we're still doing quite a bit of farming in the area, but it has its challenges being surrounded by suburbia.
You look to the future in Montgomery County, and this will be a general question. We'll toss it around a little bit later on, as we will talk about the future. Based on what you said already, what is the future of farming in Montgomery County?
Well,
in your opinion?
Yeah, I think maybe I've been too pessimistic in the past, thinking that in 20 years it would change, and we're still doing a lot of what we thought would disappear 20 years ago. We're still doing now. So I think as long as there isn't a tremendous amount of development, we could well be doing quite a bit of grain farming and hay production. I think one of the big changes that we see is with the pick your own and the vegetables and fruits and things, and they seem to be quite successful when they're in a location where they can attract commuters and people coming from the more developed areas.
Yeah, that's it. Now that's a county that does have a lot of people.
It does.
And politically, the Prince George's, Montgomery County area of the state are growing in such numbers that they are a tsunami of votes. And I wrote an article that was in the Gazette and the Baltimore Sun called Radical Blue Maryland. And in the article, I talked about the impact and the power of those voting areas. My prediction is that there will never, ever be another Democrat elected statewide to the governorship or the United States Senate from the Baltimore area. And if we have 3 now, we have Cardin, Mikulski, and O'Malley. And people, they say, well, gee, I can't believe that. But Peter Franchot coming on board, and of course we had Glenn Denning, but Franchot is the comptroller statewide. He's an elected official from Montgomery County. But if you look at those numbers, it is going to be really difficult to get a statewide office holder elected from outside of those 2 big suburbs. They are growing in such great numbers. Our third guest is Eric Spates. And Eric, you are, Wait a minute, I'm going backwards. Eric, it's good to have you with you.
Thank you.
You have impressed me so much.
I thought I was going to have to talk again.
I was going to ask you the same question, which is really insane. But Wayne Stafford is a beef and grain farmer from Cecil County. Wayne, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. We're just in the northern part of Cecil County. I always tell everybody I live as far north down south as you can get, just like the Mason-Dixon line. I farm with, I'm in a general partnership with my wife, but my son is on the farm. I have a grandson that's getting started. We do freezer beef, we call it, direct marketing. It's added quite a bit in income, which a lot of people are starting to do with different products of certain sorts. We do, like, people get halves, wholes, or quarters of beef. We have it custom butchered at a USDA plant or approved plant, and then bring it and then distribute it off the farm.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the innovative ideas or things that farmers are doing that they never did before to try to make up economically. Valerie, you've been in Annapolis for many years, and you represent the interests of the farmers. And I don't have to tell you anything about Annapolis. You know, we're in the belly of the beast down there sometimes, and it's a very tough job. It's a very difficult job for representatives of these various industries. As I said, we had a special program we did on business, and we had Melvin Thompson from the Restaurant Association and Kim Burns from the Maryland Business Responsive Government Organization, and they were talking about, the challenges they face. And I know there's always something coming at you constantly. It's like relentless. Every year, you're like the Ray Lewis.
I wish.
You're always playing defense. I mean, you really are challenged all the time. Share a little bit with the audience about what you do down there and what you have to do down there.
Well, Pat, I think the real challenge as a lobbyist representing the farm community is trying to get the attention of legislators during that very limited 90-day session that you guys try and cram 200 or 2,100 bills into. And for me, it's being able to get their attention and really help them understand what goes on Eric's, Pat's, and Wayne's farms, and let them know how potential legislation is going to impact the ability of those guys to continue to farm in the future. And you mentioned that so many of our legislators are from the urban area, and so trying to paint a picture that they can understand and bridge that gap. They say, I don't have any farmers in my district, but everybody eats. And so, we spend a lot of time trying to demonstrate or help legislators understand better how what farmers are able to do impacts what their constituents are able to enjoy with regard to food.
What committees do you deal with primarily on your issues?
Well, I'd say 90% of our bills go through the House Environmental Matters Committee and the Senate Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. So we spend the majority of our time in just those two committees on the House and Senate.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about some of why you do that. Okay, which is really a challenge for farmers, tremendous. Now, are there any farmers in the General Assembly?
There are, gosh, I don't know how many
Mac
exactly.
Middleton
Mac Middleton Farms, Charlie Otto from the Lower Shore, J.B. Jennings from Baltimore County and Harford County. Gosh, I'm going to forget somebody because I'm sitting here and a little bit nervous. But there are a number of legislators who currently farm or did farm at one point. Maggie McIntosh, the chairwoman of the Environmental Matters Committee, her family farms in the Midwest. And so she is proud of her farming roots. And that's something that I think helps us because she does have members of her family who still farm. She understands the importance of it. Her mother, who was in town this week, I believe. Maggie always talks to us about how her family farms out in the Midwest still, and that's important to her. And she wants to make sure, she doesn't have any farmers in Baltimore City in her district, that she understands what we're going through and wants to give us a fair shake in that committee, and we appreciate that.
Now, I had quoted to a lot of people on the program we did with small business, out of 141 members of the Maryland House of Delegates, only 16 are business owners. I'm one of them. So that is an enormous misunderstanding. And a lot of these folks, I remember one year a legislator stood up and we were debating something on the floor of the House, and she said, well, don't you realize, Delegate, that even though it does cost a lot of money to run government and it is getting bigger, it is creating jobs. Well, yes, but I mean, if you don't have that basic economic understanding that it's creating jobs that cost money on top of the taxpayers, and at the same time it's strangling business, in particular small business, then you don't get it. So I'm somewhat, even though I'm not a farmer, and I know JB grows the cows and I eat them, but I understand your plight, because as a small business owner, I'm under constant assault from government at all levels for all reasons, and I don't understand half of why we do some of the stuff we do. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to take a look at what does it mean, what is the life lessons and the work ethics on the farms today, before we get into some of the more difficult or stronger issues people want to hear about. I'm Pat McDonough. We have our special guest. We're talking about farming and agriculture, and we will be right back.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her.
This is Talk Radio 680 WCBM. Here's more of the Pat McDonough Show. Once again, here's Pat.
God bless the USA.
Welcome back, everybody, and we are doing a special report this evening on farming, agriculture, and one of the things we want to talk about, and we'll start off with you again, Pat Langenfelder, about the lifestyle. Farming is very unique. It's special. It's a family. It's just not an industry. It's just not a business. But the family farm, backbone of agricultural America, built this nation, and there are a lot of traditions related to it. And I want to ask you about that and how that goes, and for our listeners, what is life on the farm all about, the whole attitude, and also young people and how they become involved in this.
Okay, well, I can give you an example from our own family. My own children are sixth-generation farmers. My husband's fifth. And we have grandchildren coming up that are old enough to be doing work on the farm as well, so that would make them the seventh generation of Langenfelder family. Starting early on, the children see their parents working. I'll give you an example from when our children were growing up, and you would give them small tasks to do that were age-appropriate. But they learned to work beside their parents. They learned some responsibility. They were given small amount of money, because they were earning it, because they were working. But they learned to be responsible. They learned what it means to work and to contribute toward the family. It is a business, toward the family business. And they enjoyed it. My kids enjoyed it so much, I suspect, because when they all went off to college and had other jobs, they all came back. And now they're farming full-time. They are partners together in the farm operation, and now their children are showing the same interest because they also have had the same opportunities. They help us on the farm, and our farm is large enough that we can utilize all their talents and their time, and they enjoy it. They really and truly enjoy it.
Now, in any way, and I'll bring the point up in a minute, has the government, whether it's the state or the local folks or the feds, interfered through stupidity or regulations or law in that natural evolution and way of doing things with these young people?
Well, there was a move afoot last year in the federal government for Department of Labor proposed that it was not a good thing for children to work on the farm. They didn't want, particularly those under 16, I believe. They thought it was inappropriate and it was unsafe for children to be around animals, to handle any kind of equipment. And I don't mean giant tractors. I mean anything that had a moving part. It impacted kids with 4-H projects. It involved everybody, any child under 16 or even those over 16 for other reasons. So there was a big uproar across the country from the ag community, from 4-Hers, from FFA, and they backed off, so that did not come to fruition. But I can imagine that at 18 or 17 that you automatically know how to do everything. You don't. You have to learn it by gradually and become aware of what's safe and what isn't safe, and to do things correctly because your parents are instructing you, or your grandparents, or your aunt or uncle, whoever you're working with or for. So, I mean, there's no magical age of knowing what is the right thing to do.
Well, there's a tradition there.
Oh, absolutely.
It's an American tradition. It's been successful. It's a segment of our society that over the hundreds of years that America's been here, the founding of the country, an agricultural nation, Jefferson, Washington were all farmers, and their families were farmers. And the point is that, I mean, to me, there's a lot of nonsense, things that bureaucrats and politicians do that makes no sense at all to me. But, you're violating a family tradition and a work ethic in America that is counterproductive. There's a lot of things we've done for years and years in this nation, in this world of where, you've got to be in the modern world. This is the modern attitude, But no, there are things that actually work that have made. We didn't get here today to feed the world. We didn't achieve the success and greatness of America because we were doing a lot of stupid stuff. That all of a sudden it's stupid, and no, it worked. It worked. It was solid. I mean, you have collective farming in the old Soviet Union. They're not around anymore. You have farming in China. You've got 1.4 billion people in China. 500 million of them, the young yuppies, have left the farms and they're living in the rural coastal big cities, looking a lot like clones of American yuppies. And the farms are unsuccessful. They can't cobble out a living in China. They've got 800 million poor people in China living in rural collective farms. It doesn't work, So, yes, what we do in America has been a success. Wayne, your family life and your experiences.
To touch base on that, I think about I worked with my father every day of my life, from when I was especially old enough to tag along until the day he passed. And my son has done the same thing. I never had another job other than what was on the farm. So far, my son has not, and my grandson is comes right across the field. We used to have a dairy farm, which took up a lot of time, but now that we have the beef farm, and I think he's going to be the one that focuses on the beef because, he loves animals. And when we go back to that legislation that was almost passed, I think about, just in our county, the thousands and thousands of 4-Hers that we have, some of them live in the suburb. They have rabbits as a project. You weren't allowed to have rabbits.
Pretty soon you won't be allowed to have cows.
They weren't allowed to touch anything until they were 16 years of age.
Right.
Well, by that time, and I've seen children that were protected from that kind of thing. That was the parents' choice. But when they became of age, they had no interest in the farm, and they went on to do other things. Mm-hmm. They really didn't know what it was about.
Right.
So it's just a matter of, I don't try to work my grandson to death or my son or my dad when I was little, but you were rather proud of the fact that when he did give you something to do, that you could, you were
important.
He expected you to do it.
You were just a kid, but you were an important part of what was the family business, as Pat said, or maybe you didn't think of it as a business, but it was an important effort for the family.
No, when you're at that age, you don't think of it as a business, but, just be like, of course, when I started, my grandfather was still living, his brother, they farmed together, so I had all them to look up to.
That's great. I wonder, I think about the future of the country, and as I pointed out, the historic power it's our society of the farm and how it is the backbone of what has made us a great nation. And I don't want to get too deep and too spread out on this kind of stuff, but you think about, well, where is this all going to go in the future? And we can comment a little bit more about that as we move on. But Eric, also ask you about, because I know you were a leader actually involved with the young farmers and the family involvement and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was state chairman of the Maryland Farm Bureau Young Farmers Committee for, I think, 3 years. And like so many people involved in agriculture, I grew up on the farm, tagging along behind my dad and, getting to work in the hayfield and rake hay when I was 12 or 13 and help put hay bales in the top of the barn when it was 95 degrees. And as much as some people find that offensive to have to do work like that, somehow it's what attracted me to farming, was to be outside and feel the freedom of working on your own land and producing something of value. So, certainly... You
didn't have to go to Gold's Gym.
No, I didn't.
They kept you in shape.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that people take for granted that is... you guys take it for granted, I think, because this has been your life experience. But in today's world, to grow up with your mother and father and your grandparents all working together on the same project and to have them there, it's not like they're getting on the light rail or they're driving in the traffic in Montgomery County stuck on Rockville Pike or something like that. They are there in the morning and they are there at night and they are there all day. That family is there. And that is... for a lot of people in today's America, that is a gold standard that they can't get to. I
think it's absolutely a unique experience in America on the family farm to grow up around your parents and get to know them so much better. I think that's an experience that so few people have now, and they're so disconnected from that common effort to maintain a family business and a family home and the farm all together in one environment. It really is something quite unique, and I've seen from some friends of mine who did not grow up around agriculture and have come to be interested in it, how attracted they are to that aspect of it.
I guarantee you. I'm going to tell a little story real quick, and then when we come back after the break, we'll talk with Valerie and everybody about some of these challenges that are coming because of the environment and government intervention and all that kind of stuff. But, of course, we have a farm fair in Harford County. And a big majority of my district is in Harford County, and the part that's in Carroll County also has farming. And I live in Middle River, which used to be all farm country. And now is, there are millionaire houses all over the place on that golden thing called Blue Water down there. But I always go to the farm fair in Harford County every year. And they do it. They look in August and they find out what are the hottest days in August, and that's when they decide to do it. So my good friend Barry Glassman, who is my personal friend for many years, he's a sheep farmer, right? So he proudly wants, and he went, and his one sheep, McCullough, was the champion. Big son of a gun, really nasty, bad attitude. But anyway, Barry's first time he took me up there, he wanted to show me his sheep, right? So they're in a pen, and they're wearing hats that look like the Ku Klux Klan. It shocked me. I said, "What?" He said, "That's what they wear." I said, "Who washes these? You don't take these to the cleaners, do you?" He said, "We're farmers. We don't go to the cleaners." Okay. I said, "Because people are going to look at you." And then there was right down about 50 feet away from him, one of the sheep broke out, it started to run through this big shed, right, this warehouse, and I was thinking this would be appropriate for the music Born Free, and this thing is taking off like a rocket, and this little boy, talking about families, right, he's chasing this sheep. So the sheep goes out the one end of the warehouse. 2 minutes later, he's coming back in the other end and goes into the pen. He went out for a run, and he came back. He looked around the world and said, "There's nothing here for me. I'm going back home." So anyway, we're going to be right back. We're going to talk some more about really the challenges. We're going to open up the call lines. If you want to call in, you can join us at 410-922-6680. That's 410-922-6680. Or the long-distance toll-free number is 1-800-922-6680. That's 1-800-922-6680. I'm Pat McDonough on the Rally for America Radio Network.
Yo 680 WCBM. here's more of the Pat McDonough Show. Once again, here's Pat.
Welcome back, everybody. We have with us Wayne Stafford, Pat Langenfelder from Kent County, who is the president of the Maryland Farm Bureau, Eric Spates, who is the vice president of the Montgomery County Farm Bureau, and Valerie Connolly, who I see every day down in Annapolis, and she is the director of government relations for the Maryland Farm Bureau. And we do have a call from Rick on the Eastern Shore. Rick, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I was raised a dairy farm, many days before 13 years old, working at 4 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. And I believe that government is trying to take away a way of life and basically something that builds character for the American people. It's a work ethic that is dying out.
Well, look, there's a lot of people who aren't going to argue with you on that point, but here's the question I want to ask our guests. There isn't any question. I'm not on the committee that deals with a lot of these issues, but I see it come out on the floor of the House of Delegates, these environmental issues, the drainage issues, protect this, protect that. And as I said before, farming has done well for decades without this stuff, but okay, so we're smarter today, and there's some things we have. I would like to get, and thank you for the call, Rick. It's an important point. I'm going to start with Valerie, and we'll go around the table. Your thoughts on, number one, do you feel the regulations that are coming your way from the government are fair and they're necessary? And number two, if they are over the top and they're really too much, particularly in Maryland, this is a big regulatory state, we know that. I'm sure that in Iowa, where they don't have the Chesapeake Bay, and places like that, they don't have the challenges you guys face. But number one, what Rick brought up, I'm not a conspiratorial person, to be honest with you. But, when I was coming over here tonight in my black helicopter, I was thinking to myself, Rick said, what is the government's ultimate goal here? What is their mission? Why are they doing all this interference with farm families and farms? And Valerie, first question, of course, are they over the top? Is it a little bit too much every year, new stuff?
Well, I think, Pat, the challenge is that every year it's something new. For 25 years, Maryland's farmers have been leading the effort to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. They work with soil conservation districts. Their land is important to them. They do what they can to make sure that soil doesn't run off and nutrients don't run off. And they've been a real partner in trying to meet the goals for cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay. But even the best scientists say that it could take 10 to 15 years once you make a change on what you're doing on the land to actually see the difference in the bay. But that's a long time frame, and sometimes it feels like in Annapolis we forget what happened last year, and we've come back with a new plan this year, and we want to clean up the bay faster. And we don't give the things that were put in place the year before or 5 years before that a chance to work before we start yet with a new environmental requirement for the farm community. And I think our farmers have gotten to the point where they're saying enough is enough. We've got to be able to put in place what you've asked us to do, and we're all working cooperatively, but we've got to be able to stay economically viable.
Give us a breather. Give us a moratorium. Give us a chance to try to adjust all this stuff. The legislators, we get inundated with information all the time. And every week I get, just like Valerie provides us with, these informational packets on legislation coming up so we all know what's going on. She explains to us what it does and all that. I get it from the environmental people. The environmental people, it's 2 inches thick. And, last year there were 57 environmental laws that were proposed. 57. Not all related to farming, but 57. And I would say, Maryland is the most aggressive environmental state in the nation. And I believe it's for 2 reasons. One, because we have the Chesapeake Bay. And if you ever look at a shot of the bay on the Weather Channel or an overhead air shot, half the state is water. So the bay is big. And the state surrounds the bay. So the second point is we have an aggressive, green, environmental legislature. So you put the two together, that's a heck of a package. And the other, I'll tell you, politically, it's unstoppable. We're outnumbered. It was like just on Republicans, it's 98 to 43 in the House of Delegates. On people who are farmers or have experience with farms, as Valerie pointed out earlier, it's very few. And as I pointed out, on business owners who get hit with the same kind of regulations, I mean, we have minimum wage this year, we have sick leave this year, we have all kinds of things coming at us. It's like 16 of us. So we're grossly outnumbered by people who do not have a sensitivity to this stuff. So we'll go to you, Eric. Your thoughts on, is it too much?
Yeah, I certainly think it is. And I served as a supervisor for 6 years on the Montgomery Soil Conservation District, and find that what we were doing through the soil conservation districts, which was applying conservation measures on the ground voluntarily. We were offering incentives to farmers to help put in grass waterways and filter strips and waterers and stream fencing and things of that nature, was very effective. We accomplished a lot. We didn't have to have any regulation. No enforcement was necessary to achieve a considerable amount of progress. But what we end up finding is, like with our nutrient management regulations that we've been dealing with for a number of years now, is I'm required to fill out forms, keep records of all these things, and spend hours filling out forms to send them in because of some new regulation. But it hasn't changed anything about the way that I farm. I still soil test. I do everything scientifically. I don't apply excess nutrients. I'll split applications of fertilizer to put it on the crop when it's most needed. But I think the feeling of some of these legislators is, well, we have some bad players out there, and we don't want to look at who's causing the problem. So we need a broad law just to put everybody in it, so nobody feels like they're discriminated against. Well, as a young farmer, I found that these regulations increasingly cost me so much time. And they'll pass a law and say, well, it should only take you 6 or 8 hours to fill out these forms. Well, that's effectively a day lost. And if I have employees and I should be there managing the employees to make them productive, it costs me a lot to do all these things. And I don't think they have any concept of the implications of that.
Let me tell you something. If they just say to you that it only takes 6 to 8 hours like that, dismiss it like that's not much, they don't have any concept. Because when you said that, that just shocked me. We're going to get to Pat and Mr. Stafford in just a minute, but I want to take a call from John in Pikesville. John, good evening.
Good evening, Pat and guests. My question, do any Maryland farmers use or are required to use super silt fences to avoid soil erosion from agricultural or animal grazing fields?
What is it again?
Silt fence.
You guys are familiar with it? All right, thanks for the call, John.
I don't know if Val wants to take this. I'll take a stab at it. But no, we are not required to, and I don't know of anybody who does. The super silt fencing is something that's generally used in construction where there's complete disruption of the soil. What we attempt to do is leave grass buffers around any field that might be cultivated. We try to keep the animals out of the stream, use filter strips, grass waterways. So we're effectively doing the same thing to reduce erosion, reduce runoff, prevent the sediment from getting into the stream, but we're not using specifically the super silt fence.
Well, according to the information I have, Maryland farmers have installed over 20,000 projects on their own and spent $14 million of their own money to help clean up the Chesapeake Bay. Same thing, Pat. You're the head of the Maryland Farm Bureau. Do you feel, and I mean, you've been in this business for a while, you have different generations of your family, so you can reflect about how it was 20 years ago. Are they overloading you with too much, too fast?
Well, I will have to parrot what they have already mentioned, that a lot of this is not giving enough. We're not given enough time to see the results of our practices that have been installed. And again, we've done a lot of it voluntarily over the years. The paperwork is astronomical. I mean, I'm the one who usually does the filling out of the papers, or fortunately been able to passing it on to the next generation. But yes, I think it's a little bit too much, and they're just not giving us enough time, not us personally, but not enough time for our BMPs to show up in the end into the
What's
bay.
a BMP?
Best management practices. For example, the ones Eric was describing, we put in buffer strips. We have riparian buffers. We put grass waterways in, all things to reduce runoff and reduce sediment movement. We do no-till practices. There's a whole lot of things that are being done on the farm, and they've been going on for quite a while. And just because they pass a new regulation and say, "Oh, you must do thus and so," the regulation doesn't make us become better farmers. It just makes us do more things to satisfy someone else.
Valerie?
The comment I wanted to make on that, and Pat said voluntary, and Eric said voluntary, and the thing is, the environmental community, the radical environmentalists in our state, hate the idea that we do anything voluntarily. They continue to tell folks that the farm community is not regulated, and that's an anathema to them. And they want regulation. They want command and control. They want farmers to operate under a permit and say, "Mother, may I?" to the government in order to farm. Farmers have voluntarily been doing a lot of this. We lead the nation in Maryland in no-till farming. To the gentleman that called in about the silt fences, we don't use silt fences, but we no-till farm. We don't dig up the ground. We try and prevent the soil from moving while we farm through the practices we have adopted, rather than have to do a silt fence because we deep-till plow. We haven't done that in 25 years in Maryland. Most farmers have converted over to a no-till situation. And so we do it voluntarily, but the radical environmentalists hate that because they don't have control over it. They can't come out and inspect it. They can't say, "Yes, we agree, you're doing it correctly." They refuse to recognize anything that we do voluntarily.
Thank you, Pat McDonough. All right, now wait, I want to get over here to Wayne. Okay. Now, Wayne, the same subject, the government over the top, interfering too much, and you're a beef and grain farmer, so maybe this is even worse with you.
I don't think it's any worse because we're all overburdened, but anybody who has livestock has the manure, which is the other aspect of things. You know, nutrient management was a voluntary term. Now it's nutrient management regulations. Nutrient management has been around since the late 70s, early 80s, which, again, was a voluntary program. It was back when science learned that we could test our manure to see the value of it and apply it properly. We learned to calibrate manure spreaders so we knew what we were putting on. And the thing of it is, just like Eric says, you don't put on excess because it's going to cost you. You know, and that the bottom line is very close. So we've been doing basically the same practices since the early 80s, at least, and now it's the same things we're doing, only it's regulated. And you have all these groups that somehow jump in there and think they're smarter than we are and are kind of like self-appointed regulators. You know, they think we need to answer to them. We already answer to the Department of Agriculture and Department of Environment and stuff like that. And all these other groups think they need to be able to see all this information.
Well, I always say about Maryland, one of the unfortunate aspects of living in this wonderful state, which I love, I grew up here. My father grew up here. My grandfather was thrown out of Ireland, so he didn't grow up here. But, you know, we have like a double whammy in this state. And if you're a farmer or you're a business owner, you get these federal regulations and these nonsensical ideas that some knucklehead thinks up about separating the children of the farm and, you know, putting them in a different category. And then we have the double whammy of Maryland, where, as Valerie pointed out, the and she's kind. I compared her to Pat McDonough. She said environmental radicals. I call them environmental wackos. So there is a distinction between the two terms. But, you know, they have a lot of power. And it is about power, and she, I think, used a good term, command and control, not only over the farming industry, but over a lot of different industries. It's a lot about power. So we've got this double whammy. We've got to put up with what Iowa farmers don't have to put up with. I mean, they get that nonsense coming out of Washington, but they don't get that nonsense coming out of Annapolis relentlessly. It is relentless. And that is one of the phenomenons about Maryland and Annapolis. I have callers call me all the time when I do day radio or this, and they always say, you know, why are the politicians in Annapolis so stupid? And I say, you know, first of all, you're making a serious mistake. The members of the Maryland General Asylum are not stupid, okay? They are evil geniuses. You will think everything that has possibly been done that can be done to a farmer or a taxpayer or someone else has been done. There is nothing else. You can reek your brain for days and say, what else can they do? What regulation? What abomination can they? There's nothing left. I mean, look at this year. When this year is done and the Second Amendment is destroyed and the capital punishment is gone and we're going to build windmills, which are going to cost $2 billion, 30 miles in the ocean, 40 stories high. If they build that for $2 billion, I will buy every ratepayer in the state a crab cake, and it'll never happen. And then, of course, we're going to raise the gas taxes, right? So you would think there's nothing else. They've done it all. Watch what happens next year. If there's something left, they will do it, and they will find a way. So it is a tough battle. And, Wayne, I am going to get to you because, I didn't get a chance to ask you about this issue. But when we come back, we're going to get a little more specific. We're going to talk about best management projects or best management practices. And I want to talk a little bit, I don't know if you can comment if you want, about the Hudson case down on the Eastern Shore, which touches on some of the stuff we just talked about. I'm Pat McDonough. We'll be right back after the news.
This is Talk Radio 680 WCBM. Here's more of the Pat McDonough Show. Once again, here's Pat.
Okay, welcome back, everybody, to the second hour. We're doing a special report on farming and agriculture and just sharing a lot of information about stuff that I don't know anything about and very interesting. Wayne Stafford is with us, Pat Langenfelter, Eric Spates, and Valerie Connolly. And Wayne Stafford, I'd like to go to you. One of the things that apparently has happened, actually, that the Maryland General Assembly has done that is beneficial and helpful to the family farm is the estate tax has been changed.
Oh, yes. Like I said, that could save more family farms in Maryland than any single thing they've ever done. Kind of overburdens. It doesn't take, of course, it used to be $1 million exemption, but it was a 16% tax rate above anything over $1 million. Mm-hmm. So that's where most of the farms went. They had to sell it to pay off the inheritance tax. Mm-hmm. So that would end the chain rather quickly. But with the $5 million exemption, we all feel it should be just eliminated altogether. But that raises the bar for the average family farm that that gets them, they're all below that $5 million level.
Well, Valerie, let me ask you this. You're in Annapolis. What are some of the issues that are currently revolving around down there that are of concern?
This year, I guess one of the major bills that we're working on is one, we're trying to defeat a bill that would require a new pesticide reporting and database system. Pesticides are already very significantly regulated by the federal EPA. It costs millions of dollars, requires hundreds of tests before a product is ever approved. And then farmers who use pesticides have to follow label directions. They have to get many of them have to be licensed in the state of Maryland. They have to be re-licensed and re-educated every year, every 2 years. And they keep records. But there's an effort underway by folks who want to create a new database where a farmer would send in all his records or her records about pesticide use, and it would be put in a public database for research purposes. This database, the Department of Ag says, is going to cost $2.6 million to create. It's going to take there's something like 13,500 chemicals registered in the state of Maryland. We think it's something that is a solution to address a problem that doesn't exist.
A solution looking for a problem.
Exactly. The products are very well regulated. If there is an exposure issue, or even if, as some of the researchers came in and talked about different illnesses, if somebody finds a cancer cluster and says, we'd like to study this, we think that that there's a process in place already to pull records from farmers, to go out and voluntarily ask for the farm community, homeowners, lawn care folks, anybody using a chemical to come together and say, okay, let's study this and figure out what the problem is. We're not sure we need a massive $2.6 million database to get there.
Now, how does this work? I mean, is this like what Pat is talking about? 6 hours a day on paperwork? This is more paperwork?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. It's another attempt to gather information from us where we're already subject to a lot of regulation with what we do. In order to spray a regulated pesticide in the state of Maryland, you have to have a pesticide applicator's license, which you get through the Maryland Department of Agriculture. You have to have continuing education, I think it's every 2 years or something, in order to maintain your license. We're required to keep records of everything that we spray and subject to inspection by the Department of Agriculture. So that information is already there if there's a need for it. But this is just an effort to require us to assemble all this information, which, again, I agree with Val. They're creating a bureaucratic mechanism for a problem that doesn't exist.
So, in other words, they're putting you to work at your expense for a study related to the University of Maryland or the Department of Agriculture or whoever, and putting you out to do their work, on something that's questionable to start with.
Well, and I think another point to be made here is that these types of things typically disproportionately hurt the smaller farmer.
Oh, sure.
They don't have staff. They don't have a secretary that can put all that information together. So while on one hand the legislators will say, well, we support the small farms and the family farm, they're actually attempting to implement legislation that hurts the small and family farmer.
That's an interesting point, and you wonder, what is the pushback? What can you do? You mentioned earlier in the program that the Department of Labor came up with this idiotic idea about not allowing family youngsters to work on the farm for whatever dumb reason it was. What is the pushback the farmers have? And Valerie, I want to ask you this. This particular piece of legislation, what committee is that going in front of? Environmental?
It is. It's in the Senate, or the House Environmental Matters Committee and the Senate Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs.
Now, who's sponsoring this?
On the House side, Steve Lafferty is the primary sponsor. On the Senate side, Roger Mano from Montgomery County.
All right, now, Mano, he's a farmer, right?
I don't believe he farms.
Does he know how to spell farm? Steve Lafferty is an environmentalist to the extreme. And I don't know why Steve is. He comes from Towson. There are no farms in Towson. There's no environment in Towson. But Steve is way, way, way out there. And he introduces, when I got that package of 57 environmental bills, Steve sponsored half of them. So once again, it's like my district, a lot of recreational boating. We have Middle River, we have the Bay, right? They came out last year with a boating license for gatherings. Now, we have 4th of July, all the boaters go out to Hart and Miller Island, and they set off the fireworks. It's hundreds and hundreds of boaters of all shapes and sizes. And you know who introduces it? Delegate Holmes from Prince George's County. They have no real water there. They don't have any boaters. They have the Potomac River, which I believe under scientific study, if we were to study that Montgomery County residents, and not you because you're too far away from the river, and Prince George's County, I think they drink out of that river. And it must have some effect. That's only a theory that I have, but I'm not sure. But anyway, let's get back to, we're talking about the regulation, and something good came out. We got the estate tax. Maybe someday we can get rid of the darn thing completely, because I call it the family death tax, because it really affects families. But one of the cases that became popular or well-known, notoriety all over the United States, and I want to get your opinion on this, and then I'll tell you my experience in relationship to this particular case. But this is the Hudson case, where the threat from groups like the Water Keepers Alliance, which is Bobby Kennedy's son, Robert Kennedy Jr., and this is an alliance that has like Sean Penn and Madonna and everybody giving them millions and millions of dollars to do God's work. And the University of Maryland Law Clinic, which I'll tell you about my experience with them. But it's early Thursday, Judge William Nickerson of the U.S. District Court decided the case of the Water Keepers Alliance versus Allen Hudson and Purdue Family Farms in favor of the Hudsons and Purdue and this is a major victory for the farm community. The Maryland Farm Bureau thanks all of its members and friends across the country who contributed to the Save Farm Families Fund to help defend the Hudson families. So, Pat, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on this whole case, and what was this really all about?
Well, the case was a travesty to start with. The waterkeepers chose to go after a small farm family, a young couple with 2 small children. They have 2 chicken houses and some beef cattle on their small farm, couple hundred acres that they grow corn and hay to feed their animals, feed their cows. They were misguided from the get-go, but they were after somebody. They targeted this family, thinking that they had caught them with a pile of chicken litter too close to a ditch on their farm. As it turned out, the chicken litter was really biosolids, treated biosolids from Ocean City that they had stored there. And MDE, Department of the Environment, did come out to the farm eventually and determined that it was biosolids, and there was nothing wrong with the biosolids. Asked them to move the pile to another location on the farm, which Alan did, and to cover it, and then to spread it the following spring for fertilizer, which is what he was to do. And they said, there's nothing else, there's no other violation, ta-ta, that was the end. The waterkeepers were not satisfied. They filed in federal court using the Clean Water Act as their basis, and said that they had violated the Clean Water Act. And so this trial, or this episode, lasted 3 years before finally it did go to trial last year. But it was murderous on that family. They were under doctor care. The children needed psychiatric help because they were so traumatized by flying over helicopters or airplanes from the waterkeepers constantly flying nearby.
Why were they flying
because
helicopters?
That's how they discovered.
No, they were keeping an eye. They were monitoring.
They were monitoring with using.
They have enough money to buy helicopters.
No. They got those for free.
They got it for free.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They weren't charged anything. Of course, they used the Environmental Law Clinic for free services.
Oh, yeah. We'll get into that in a minute. No.
I know you will. But anyway, as it turned out, the community came together, started out with some young farmer groups on the lower shore, and did some fundraising because these people were just about to go under and go bankrupt. And the community said, oh, no, you're not going to do that. So they came together, did some fundraising. We created a SaveFarmFamilies.org group, of which I was one of the trustees. And it was wonderful how across the country, thousands and thousands of dollars came in to help them pay their legal fees because they were astronomical fees. I mean, they had to hire good lawyers in order.
Do you know how much money?
Approximately money that came in.
That they needed to protect their rights.
I think about $500,000 is what their legal fees amounted to after the 3 years. And that, I mean, they couldn't have afforded.
That's 15 years of the average farmer's income.
Well, exactly. And they're a smaller farmer, so they might not even be to that so-called average. But it was a travesty. It was downright travesty.
Well, one of the I don't know if you're aware of this, but one of the things I did was introduced and pre-filed a bill that said that the law clinic couldn't do this or anything else. And I had Dr. Jay Pearman and his whole crew visiting my little office in Annapolis, begging me not to introduce that bill and please stop ranting on radio, making us look bad. Now, Jay is actually a wonderful guy. I'm very fond of him. And the two ladies that are with the law firm and all that sort of thing. But they told me they were not going to do this kind of stuff anymore. Now, I don't know whether they're doing it in other areas. Are they back in the farmers? Because I'll put that bill back in there.
Well, Pat, I haven't gotten confirmation on this yet. I'm waiting for it from the attorneys working on it. But my understanding is that the Environmental Law Clinic just made another Public Information Act request to the Maryland Department of Agriculture to get copies of all the nutrient management plans of farmers in the state. We just went through this process, and they did it on behalf of the Assateague Waterkeeper. So, I mean, that was the same group they started with on this case.
Could you give me that information?
As soon as I get it, I'm waiting. Yeah, I'm trying to get it from the lawyers who are familiar with it, but it just goes to show they're not going to give up. They're going to continue down this path.
All right, then we're going to put that bill in next year. We're going to pre-file it, or I'll put an amendment on to the budget as it comes out next week, because Jay told me they weren't going to do that stuff. So once I get confirmation on that, we're going to make a little noise about that. Eric?
I think one of the things that bothered me most about this Hudson case was this principle that, it's my understanding, I'm no lawyer, but that under the Clean Water Act, anybody has standing to sue anybody over an environmental concern. So somebody drove by and saw a pile that they thought flew over, and saw a pile that they thought was poultry litter, which they were mistaken about from the get-go, and had the legal standing to file a suit against them. That's the thing that I think needs to be looked into. I mean, we're subject to regulation by the Department of Environment and the Department of Agriculture, and I believe that if there is an environmental concern, it should be addressed to those agencies with whom we work so that they can come out and see if they
should go through the administrative process first.
Absolutely.
Before it goes into circuit court.
Right.
All right. We have to take another break. Wayne will catch you on the other end. We're going to get a call from Steve on the line, and we'll be right back.
Hello, Milton Lynn for Harford Coin Company. What's new at Harford Coin Company is that we are now a second-generation family business. We are now also approaching our 50th year of buying rare coins and currencies in the Baltimore area. We are interested in coins of ancient Rome and Greece, the medieval period, United States coins, almost everything that's coins, currency, metals, or tokens prior to 1970. Please call us at 410-665-1814 if you have coins, currency, metals, or tokens of any country or any period of time. We have been, for almost 50 years, Maryland's leading buyer of these items. We are also pleased to announce that we are with the Better Business Bureau an A1 Plus rated company. Again, call us at 410-665-1814 or visit us at 8722 Cedar Hill Road or on the internet at harfordcoin.com. 410-665-1814, and thank you.
Hello, this is Pat McDonough. People are concerned about the future. They all ask the same question. What can I do to make a difference? Well, one of the things you can do is join Rally for America. Become a super citizen. Stay informed and get involved. That's what Rally for America is all about. And it's easy to do. Simply call 410-238-0025. That's how you become a member of Rally for America. This is Pat McDonough urging you to call 410-238-0025.
I'm Ian Parrish, president of Investors United School of Real Estate Investing. Here's a simple question for you. Given the fact that 9 out of 10 of you will own real estate in your lives, and given the fact that 9 out of 10 of you aren't sure what your financial future is going to look like, why aren't you educating yourself in real estate investment, especially given the certainty that what you learn can increase your prosperity now and throughout your life? Is it because you think the market's bad? Is it because you think you don't have the money? Is it because you think you don't have the time? Maybe you think you already know enough. How will you know that any of those things are true if you don't try to find out? Call 410-426-6000 to tour our local campus or go to InvestorsUnited.com and take our free online class. You can even pull it up on your phone. Your financial future depends on answers, not questions. And at Investors United School of Real Estate Investing, you can find them. Investors United. Earn while you learn.
Our great nation is facing difficult times. We the people must work to protect America by becoming super citizens. A super citizen is someone who becomes involved and stays informed. The best way to be a super citizen is to join Rally for America. Rally for America is a nonpartisan citizen action group. Join Rally for America by calling 410-238-0025. Rise to the occasion. Restore America's greatness. Call 410-238-0025. Remember, only we the people can preserve liberty. Become a super citizen. Call 410-238-0025. Ronald Reagan once said freedom can disappear in one generation. Make sure we are not the last generation.
Now, the most powerful news, talk, and information team in Baltimore is right here. Fox News, along with the Weather Channel, delivers the information you need. Plus, hear the hot topics and issues of the day. Only on Talk Radio 680 WCBM and WCBM.com.
This is Talk Radio 680 WCBM. Here's more of the Pat McDonough Show. Once again, here's Pat.
Lord knows she's deep in debt. She's coming through another depression, and for some it ain't over yet. We've all been divided, playing our own selfish games. Why does it always take the hard times to get people back together again? But I believe in America.
Back, everybody. Pat McDonough, Rally for America Radio Network. Special report tonight, farming, agriculture, and we have the real folks here talking about it. Also, as you know, big issue in the state of Maryland, the attack, the assault on the Second Amendment, our constitutional right to bear firearms to protect our lives and family and property. And if this bill passes, it will be the most oppressive gun control act in the United States of America, as the governor of this state continues to use Maryland as his super PAC in his attempt to win the presidency. What this is all about is that Governor O'Malley is using the people and this state and the money of the taxpayers to make sure he is the top dog on all of the liberal touch points and all of the liberal issues to win that Democrat primary. And we are the test tube for all of his programs, and we are the victims. So if you want to fight back on that issue, and we've had hearings, and that bill is moving along, but thousands upon thousands of great Americans, really salt-of-the-earth people, have come down to testify in front of my committee, and I had the opportunity to meet many of them. I have received over 7,000 emails, and I put you all on a database, so I'm going to be getting back to you. And the situation is that the bill is flying through, the skids are greased, and O'Malley has that super majority of radicals down there, and he is in charge of the show. So the bill is going to pass, unfortunately, but I will say this to you, that once it passes, we can petition it to referendum, even though at the same time we are experiencing those liberals in Annapolis who care so much about people power and not suppressing the vote. They are in the business right now of destroying the petition process. Talk about hypocrisy in the state of Maryland, and we're going to be fighting that. But I believe even if they do make it more difficult, and Maryland is the toughest state in the nation right now to get a petition successfully done, even if they are successful, I think there are so many organizations, gun clubs, the NRA shall issue, so many organized structures in this state that we can petition that to referendum. Now, here's the exciting part about that. If it gets petitioned to referendum, the bill will be dead, null, and void, and will not be able to take effect until the referendum is held, which is more than a year from now, in November of 2014, which is the statewide election year. So that'll be an important referendum issue on the ballot and will affect the various races around the state and will hold off this unconstitutional assault on the Second Amendment. Now, the other part about that is that I am working once again with Judicial Watch with a possible lawsuit. And I think eventually all of this stuff is going to wind up in the Supreme Court. There are 7 federal lawsuits already in the pipeline around the country on various Second Amendment issues, and they're all going to wind up at some point in time, perhaps even next November, when the court convenes on this issue, and they will make the final decision. But I want to remind you that next Saturday, the 7th Legislative District will be having public open hearings at the VFW up in Parkton, Maryland, next Saturday. That's the 16th, the day before St. Patrick's Day. And St. Patrick's Day is on a Sunday, so after you go to church, you got to do other things that you shouldn't do. But everybody's Irish on St. Patrick's Day. Doesn't matter what your ethnic background is, everybody is Irish on St. Patrick's Day. But anyway, this is Saturday, the 16th. It's open to the public. You come on in. The legislators will be there, and we'll hear your thoughts and your ideas. It's at 12 noon at the VFW, and we look forward to having you. But we want to get back to our issue today, which is farming, agriculture, and the challenges and the rewards that this great American tradition has provided to us. Valerie, I want to ask you, I know you're working down there, and Pat and the organization are working down there. What else can actually be done? You're working with the same folks that I have to work with, and I know it's not easy. I mean, what else? How can we educate or do something to get these folks to understand, the stuff you're doing is destructive and non-essential, or it's just in your DNA and you're going to do it?
I think for us, for the farm community, we've had, and I wouldn't say ultimate success because some bad things have happened to us, but we have, over the years, been able to get a fair hearing in both committees where our bills are on a lot of our issues, and we've been able to, while we talk about the pesticide bill this year, that's been up 4 times before, and it's been defeated for 4 times before. So we make efforts during the interim, when you guys aren't down there for your 90 days, we take committees and members of the legislature out to visit farms so they get a firsthand picture of what's happening. And so when we're down there talking to them, they can picture in their head the livestock that they visited and the grain fields that they saw.
That is a cow. That is a chicken.
Exactly. And so we think it's beneficial, and we do appreciate that both committees have been willing to come out and visit farms
and that's a big part
and understand what we're talking to them about.
Right. And that's important, that public relation, and the fact that they respond.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't want your listeners to come away to thinking that everybody in Annapolis is opposed to the farm community. I would say it's a challenge every year when we go down and have to argue again during that 90-day period why an idea that came from an environmental group or a group that has another agenda, and they bring a bill forward, we have to go over the top with our case for why it's a bad idea. But we do get a fair chance to present that, I think.
Excuse me, producer, I'm hearing music. It's nice music, but not appropriate at this time. All right, let's take another call. Yeah, that's the song. We don't want to hear that right now. But we'll play it on the break. I see you're tuning it up. He used to be a farmer.
Ah, excellent.
Didn't work out. Now he's in radio. Might work out, might not. We don't know. It's still early. All right, here is Steve in Dundalk. Steve, good evening.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is the government pushing for this genetically modified food, which is basically unhealthy? Even the farm animals don't want to eat it, and I was wondering if that's going on. And I'd like to bring up something else. When you brought up the fact that that lady was bailed out by farmers and stuff, I remember Willie Nelson, he was trying to bail out the farmers, and he was doing a pretty good job of it. And then the government pushed on this that he did something wrong with the IRS, which I think was nothing but to stop him from saving farm.
The farm. He organized Farm Aid.
Farm Aid, yes.
Right. Thank you, Steve. All right, the genetic food.
I'll take a stab at that. Genetically modified is a term that's batted around quite a bit, and I think has a lot of misperceptions associated with it. We've been selectively breeding crops for thousands of years, probably tens of thousands of years, and even our pets, our dogs, all these breeds have been selectively bred together to achieve certain traits.
Certain things, yeah.
So this notion that genetically modified is somehow inherently bad is really just wrong. We have hybrid corn, which basically is a corn seed that comes from 2 different parents. So you have beneficial traits from both parents that results in a crop that may be drought tolerant, might produce more protein or better characteristics, better digestibility for the animals. I'm not quite sure where Steve gets his information that it's unhealthy and the farm animals won't eat it.
Mine do.
Yeah, I think most of them are. I think where we've sort of come up against the emotional aspect of this is the scientific means of breeding now, where it's transgenic, where they're actually taking genes from one plant and inserting in another, and I think that scares some people. Mm-hmm. But typically what we find is when you have plants that are so specifically bred for a particular production, they're really not robust in a natural environment. So, people's concern has been, these things are going to be monster plants that are going to take over everywhere. And generally the opposite is really the case. Mm-hmm. I mean, our big commodity crops here are corn and soybeans, and if you leave a field of soybeans, the beans that drop to the ground and emerge before the frost will die anyhow. I doubt if the field of soybeans would have a bean in it in 4 or 5 years if you just left it alone.
Right.
So,
well, the one other aspect about GMO traits is that you're also talking about a better quality food. It's less stressed. Number one, the first thing you use is less pesticides on it.
Right.
Because the insects can't tear into it. Mm-hmm. It also takes less water, but you have a better quality feed. It's a healthier plant.
Right.
And you could stand up to Mother Nature a little better.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have the American Medical Association that states that there is no scientific justification that it's bad for you or it needs special labeling.
Right. Well, I'm not sure what Steve was talking about, but I'm glad he asked the question because we got some good answers. And we're going to take one more call before we take our final break. Believe it or not. Here is Randy. Hi, Randy. Glenn Burney. Randy's calling.
Hi, how are you?
On the air, Randy. Go right ahead.
My question is, I've done a lot of things like I've worked around farms when I was a younger person. Did a lot of baling hay for horses.
Randy, you got to turn your radio off. You have your radio in the background. It's distracting our listeners who have limited attention spans anyway.
What I'm asking is, when the state, what I don't understand is, like, if the state of Maryland approaches a farmer that owns 1,000 acres and say, okay, we're going to give you this, we want you to disc this in now. We want you to disc this in your property, and if they don't come and do a compact test, how are they knowing that they're making any headway?
All right, thank you. Any answers to that question?
So I think Randy's saying if the state says farmers should use certain best management practices and do certain things on their farm, and if they don't come back out and specifically test that farm, how do we know the farmer's doing the right thing? And I guess my first thought always on something like that is we don't have the wherewithal. The government doesn't have the wherewithal to go out and check everybody for what they do.
Thank God.
Thank God. I mean, even if you look at tax compliance, the IRS audits, 4% of the tax returns that are filed, and we trust that people are doing the right thing, and, and we go back and we cross-check where we can. The farm community files annual paperwork with the Maryland Department of Agriculture to demonstrate that they are complying with it, that they have a nutrient management plan and they're complying with it. And I think Eric said earlier the soil conservation districts are very active on farms to help farmers implement these plans. So I don't know that we'll ever get to a place where the government can come out and do 100% fact check on everything that goes on every farm. But I don't think it's necessary. I think farmers are doing the right thing. Their farms wouldn't be viable. They wouldn't be able to grow good crops if they were doing the wrong thing.
That's the point, isn't it? Right. I mean, it's self-interest.
The best management practices have scientific and time-tested behind them.
Sure.
They know they work. They look at the quality of water. They take samples of water from runoff down the waterways and the stuff. And when you talk about erosion and sediment that gets into the bay, it's not the amount of water that comes down, it's the speed. So anything, just like leaving your crop debris in the field, anything that slows that water down stops or minimizes erosion.
And I think another good point to make there is we're all interested in keeping our soil. That's the medium in which we make our living.
Yes.
We certainly don't want to see our soil wash away.
No. All right. Well, listen, we have to take our final break. And believe me, I told you in the beginning, going to go by quick, right? So when we come back, I'm going to start with Wayne. We're going to go around the table. I'm going to ask each of you if you want to mention one subject we haven't mentioned that you think is important, and also your thoughts on the future of the family farm in America and in Maryland. Okay? We're going to close it out with that. I'm Pat McDonough. We'll be right back.
And moving forward, things don't look too sunny. Scam man, I'm so alone. Don't have a mortgage to call my own. So much for the roses and the clover. I'm using food stamps to feed a rover.
Temperatures on the high side of normal out there through the nighttime hours. Lots of stars to see under mostly clear skies. And we drop it back to the mid to upper 30s now. We do set those clocks ahead an hour. And we're going to finish up the weekend Sunday with a few afternoon clouds, lots of sunshine, and we'll get up to around 60 degrees. It looks like any clouds for Sunday night will clear out in the late night. And then we start the work week off on Monday with cloudy skies. And we'll top out in the upper 50s. I'm Jeff Eno from the Weather Channel for Talk Radio 680 WCBM.
Dr. Jonathan Silverman would like to invite you to a new and exciting dental experience. Whether you're coming for comprehensive care, preventative care, pediatric dentistry, or tooth rehab and replacement, Dr. Silverman will provide the services you need at his office in Owings Mills. Dr. Silverman uses the latest technology to restore patients to optimal health, but his greatest asset is his ability to listen to each patient's concerns. Call Dr. Jonathan Silverman's office in Owings Mills, 410-356-8400 for an appointment or a complimentary consultation.
Is your roof leaking? Do you have water spots on your walls or ceilings? Do you have leaks around your chimney or skylights? If so, then you may need to repair or replace your roof before the damage escalates. Call Wallace Roofing at 410-655-3700. Wallace Roofing is third generation, family owned and operated. They're your full service roofing company, specializing in steep and flat roofs, all types of metal roofs, gutters, downspouts, and skylights. They do residential and commercial roofs and don't use subcontractors. Getting a roof repaired is something most homeowners dread. And when the roof does need repair, it's important to get not only the finest quality materials available, but a fair and reasonable price on installing those materials as well. If your roof is showing signs of wear or problems, call Wallace Roofing at 410-655-3700. 410-655-3700. Wallace Roofing does roof repair and replacement. Call Wallace Roofing today at 410-655-3700. MHIC number 1566. Wallace Roofing. Above all, a good roof.
Hello, this is Pat McDonough. People are concerned about the future. They all ask the same question. What can I do to make a difference? Well, one of the things you can do is join Rally for America. Become a super citizen. Stay informed and get involved. That's what Rally for America is all about. And it's easy to do. Simply call 410-238-0025. That's how you become a member of Rally for America. This is Pat McDonough urging you to call 410-238-0025.
Glen Burnie Transmission services all cars, trucks, buses, vans, and 4x4s. As the largest transmission service center in the area, Glen Burnie Transmission offers a variety of solutions for their customers. Whether it's a remanufactured transmission, a rebuilt transmission, or a used transmission, they can provide what the customer needs. Each of their trained technicians specializes in a certain type of transmission and attends industry seminars to update their skills. Glen Burnie Transmissions only specializes in one thing, transmissions. At Glen Burnie Transmission, they pride themselves on superior service. Their staff is on site during all business hours. They also offer a complimentary road test to help determine your transmission needs. Call Glen Burnie Transmission for over 50 years serving the people of Maryland. 410-766-8500. Tell them WCBM sent you. 410-766-8500.
Our great nation is facing difficult times. We the people must work to protect America by becoming super citizens. A super citizen is someone who becomes involved and stays informed. The best way to be a super citizen is to join Rally for America. Rally for America is a nonpartisan citizen action group. Join Rally for America by calling 410-238-0025. Rise to the occasion. Restore America's greatness. Call 410-238-0025. Remember, only we the people can preserve liberty. Become a super citizen. Call 410-238-0025. Ronald Reagan once said freedom can disappear in one generation. Make sure we are not the last generation.
Lawyer, musician, and radio host. That's me, Tom Moore, for sensible dialogue on the hottest issues. those that matter most to you. Join us for the Tom Moore Show, 10 p.m. every Saturday right here on Talk Radio 680 WCBM.
This is Talk Radio 680 WCBM. Here's more of the Pat McDonough Show. Once again, here's Pat.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the concluding segment of what I think has been a very informative and helpful program for me as a state legislator. A complex issue, but the problem is most people don't know about it, and it is essential to the success of our state and our country. And I'm going to ask our special guest to do two things for me. Number one, bring up an issue we might have missed and not covered tonight, and also their own personal opinion about the future of the family farm in the state of Maryland. And if they want to go across the United States, they can do that too. And I want to start off with Wayne Stafford, who is a beef and grain farmer from Cecil County.
Okay. Well, the one thing I like to touch on is what we call the Buy Local campaign, which was started in Maryland. And that's just a direct marketing from the farms to the consumers. And we do live in a very populated area, and especially with the beef, there are people that ship beef all over the country, but we can get a better quality product. People want to know. They're more and more concerned about what they're eating and how they're eating it. They want to know how it's raised, and they can see. So they come directly to the farm to pick up their meat, which gives us a better – we can't, of course, overcharge for it, but it does give us a better quality income simply because we're eliminating the middleman. So when we used to ship milk or whatever, you paid the freight to get it there. You got paid whatever they said they were going to pay you. So you do have a little more control over your own destiny on that. And the better job you do of marketing, the better you're going to do. Just like ours, we advertise it. We do not use growth hormones and don't put antibiotics in the feed, and it's cleared. And we use vacuum packaging, which they can actually see the product in their hand. And as far as what you asked about the future of the family farming,
particularly in Maryland.
Yes, and I would say right now it looks better than it did right after I started farming, my generation, because the income, most parents encourage their kids to go somewhere else. Now we're at a point where you can make a living. It's tough. The regulations and all that kind of stuff makes it. It's still probably, I would say, well, it's not impossible because people do it, but there's people that start out farming on their own. They don't have the family farm to back up, but they started generations, the ones that, and then they're going to spend 24/7 at it. That there's not going to be any family vacations. There's not going to be any time off. It's such a grinding to get ahead. But I think, like I said, if we could ever get past all this over-regulation, it does have a future. Okay. I think enough people really want to do it to make it so.
And it's got to be done.
Yes.
Unless it's all big super agricultural corporations and things like that doing it. Somebody's got to do it. Pat Langenfelder is from Kent County. She's the president of the Maryland Farm Bureau. Pat, subject you'd like to bring up, and also your thoughts on the future.
Yeah, the one thing I would like to touch on is the need for continued ag land preservation programs in the state of Maryland. We have a very successful MOUth program, Maryland Ag Land Preservation Foundation, but now funding is the problem. Several years ago, we were pretty flush with money and were able to preserve a lot of farmland. But in the more recent years, and it's because of the economy and not a lot of sales, because the source of the money is from the transfer tax. So the money has not been there in the last couple of years, so that has declined. The interest is still very high. A lot of people would like to put
Explain what the program does.
The program, if a farmer is willing to sell their development rights or they're called their easements to the state or to a county, some of the counties have their own.
So that the development does not occur.
And development will not occur. That farm is forever farm, and that way is also a way to kind of keep a family farm going as well.
Capitalize.
And not only gives you money, but it also guarantees you that this land is going to be a farm. So there you have something to pass on to the children who might be interested in farming. So it kind of ties together. So it's a way of saving prime and productive land, and keeping an economically viable agriculture in the state of Maryland is possible if we would be able to continue to finance that.
All right. Well, your thoughts on the future?
I think it can be. There is a future, and we might have to change the way we farm. The kind of farming that is done in the state may change over years. Has evolved already since the way when. Used to be a tobacco state. That's not even the way we're going to do that anymore. So it became
can't outlaw food. No ban on food.
You can't ban food. So there's always that. Desire there to have some food. So I think there's still a future for farming in Maryland.
Okay, Eric Spate is the Vice President of the Montgomery County Farm Bureau. And Eric, something you'd like to add?
I think an issue that's pretty important is to continue to educate, particularly the youth, about the importance and the value of farming. And I think the environmental community has really had a lot of success in educating the youth about particular issues in our Chesapeake Bay watershed. But I think a lot of times with not a broad enough spectrum and not a fair assessment of the value of agriculture. And so we have a lot of people who grow up and think that, well, we need trees everywhere because trees are good and they help cool things and filter out pollutants and all that. And while I don't disagree with that, trees are wonderful. We need open space to farm, and we have a lot of programs in this state that are encouraging planting trees. Sometimes hundreds of feet from a waterway. There are set aside programs when there's development that's put in, which requires land to be put into forestation. A lot of times this is taking productive agricultural land that could provide somebody a living, produce food for the residents of the state and the country, and planting trees on it. So I think we really need to keep that in perspective, that agriculture is producing food. And we have good programs in our county and in the state. In our county, we have a Close Encounters with Agriculture program for, I think it's 3rd and 4th graders, and they get to learn a lot of the various aspects of agricultural production and the environmental sensitivities that we incorporate into our agricultural practices. There's also the Maryland Ag Education Foundation, which has trailers that travel around, which teach people about the value of farming and things that are done in the farming community. So I think when the public is stuck behind a slow tractor or a manure spreader and it stinks, or they see the dust coming out of the combine, a lot of times they're tempted to be annoyed by that. But rather they should think this is something that's producing food, and even if the soybean isn't directly consumed by them, in many cases it's fed to a chicken, and then they would buy the chicken and eat it, or the pork or beef or what have you. So.
Well, they think the colonel makes the chickens.
Exactly.
It's a funny thing. But also, your thoughts about the future?
I think there's a misinterpretation of farming in the state and around the country. And a lot of people say, oh, is corporate farming taking over? Well, no, it's not. The family farm is a thriving entity in this state. And certainly there's consolidation. There are some farms that fail, and there are economies of scale. So we have fewer farmers now than we did before. But a lot of them are...
Are we producing more?
We're certainly producing more.
I mean, we have fewer farmers. It's like there's been a big controversy, of course, about Sparrows Point steel mill. People always say, there were 30,000 workers there during World War II. But actually, when it dropped down to 3,000 workers, of course, it doesn't exist now because of stupid policies by the federal government. But those 3,000 workers were producing as much as those 35 or 30,000. So even though there are fewer family farms, the production is up.
Well, you also see, you got to look at the fact that we need to increase production by 70%.
Why is that? What is the 70%?
To feed the population.
Just the growth?
By the 2050.
The natural growth.
Yes. That every farmer that's out there now, or every farm, needs to increase production.
By what year?
Total production by 2050.
Well, and that can open up a whole new issue, but it's really a national security issue to have the capability in this country to produce the food that we need here. And
it is.
We don't want to let regulation destroy an industry that's vital to the people of this country.
It's amazing. It ranks right up there with oxygen in terms of importance. And, I mean, we should not be trying to destroy the family farm. That figure right there, 70%. And, of course, that's based on the fact that a lot of people in America today like to get fat. But if we could start to control that, which I've been working on diligently, as you can see, that maybe we only need a 50% growth, and I don't know. But anyway, that's the big thing that I think people ignore, is the thought that food is actually grown. So all three of you have said the future looks pretty good. So, Valerie, my question to you, a subject that we may have missed. We have 2 minutes left, and also your thoughts on the future.
Yeah, let me put a plug in for a bill we have pending in Annapolis. It's a bill to create an ag land condemnation board. And we want to have an office at the Department of Agriculture where, when government comes in and wants to condemn farmland for environmental mitigation, for a wetlands restoration project, that we have some place to take that and make government prove that there's no better way to do that project than to take prime and productive farmland. We've got an example over on the Eastern Shore where State Roads came in and took a huge acreage from a vegetable farmer who already had contracts for that project. They came in, used quick take, and took
Eminent domain?
Using eminent domain. So we think there needs to be a speed bump. We need to slow it down, and we need to make sure we preserve agricultural land, not only through the programs that were discussed, but to make sure government isn't the one putting us out of business.
I'm sure there's everybody listening believes in that idea. Is there anything they can do, a number or a person they can contact to support that, or they're just their local legislator?
Their local legislator.
All right, that number, by the way, is 410-841-3000. If you want to call any of your legislators, just call 410-841-3000, press 0, you'll get a humanoid, and just say to them, I want to speak to Senator or Delegate Pat McDonough or Senator Barry Glassman, whoever you want, and they do a very good job. They're very courteous people. And, of course, then you can get their email and whatever else you need to communicate with them. And does it have a House bill number on it?
It's House Bill 1282.
HB 1282. And who's the sponsor of that?
Delegate Addie Eckert from the Eastern Shore.
Delegate Addie Eckert, a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Addie from the Eastern Shore. Okay. Well, I want to thank all of you guys for coming by on a Saturday evening. I know you all have wonderful social lives that you had to give up, just like me. And you took your time to come in here. And we're really glad to do these programs every once in a while. We can't do them every week. I'll be back to my ranting and raving next week on pontificating on a whole bunch of subjects. We may have a new pope, and I may not like him, and I'll tell you why. But I don't know. We don't know what we're going to have. Some good news. I hate to say this. God bless him. I know where he is. Hugo Chavez passed away. That was not a bad thing. But anyway, we are going to end on a positive note. We want to thank our guests, Wayne Stafford, Pat Langenfelder, Eric Spates, and Valerie Connolly, and I'll probably see Valerie on Monday. And we hope we will helpful to you in educating you and informing you about, like I said, something that ranks right up there with oxygen, and that is food and farming. I'm Pat McDonough. Always remember, truth and knowledge guarantee liberty. Keep the faith and keep